Okay, I think I'm right. Let me just double check. It's okay. Yeah, I am. Okay, cool. All right. So, what I want to talk about today, this is a really, um, it's kind of an extension of the shame piece because shame makes us really susceptible to the conditioning of the greater collective and the conditioning of the greater collective in its relationship to the feminine mysteries has been predominantly through the ideology of control that comes out of fear, control that comes out of a need to restrain the unpredictable. And so many women end up becoming really stuck in the process of advancing themselves forward in their lives because they're dealing not only with the challenges inherent to the process of success itself, but they're also dealing with the kind of meta challenge of there not really being a template for her system's way of tapping into and birthing success, which is through the deep erotic desire to let go of control. And this is something that, we can play with the idea of it a little. We can think we want it, but until we face it and the kind of horror of it, it's not actually something we're living through. And so it's really important when approaching this space of whether it's you see it as surrender or submission, it's really important to understand the reality of it as an embodied threshold you have to pass through. It's never an idea. It's never a mental thing. It's never something you're just thinking about and strategizing from. It's always something you kind of have to allow yourself to fall into the embodied experience of it. So I wanted to talk a bit today about how I came into that space and that's what that process looked like for me, what the process of deconditioning looked like, and kind of how I opened up to the deeper somatic reality my body craved and what it took me to kind of walk the path of living in alignment with that intelligence instead of fighting it so much. Because even though this is our most natural space, the entire conditioning of the broader world at large is that of resisting and controlling and forcing and fixing and figuring out. And in that static, there's not really a lot of room or space to even hear the deeper power of what it means to let go of all of that. It's very difficult to give yourself that space to experience it. It's very difficult to not only experience it, but build your entire creative journey and pathway to where you're going from that place. So I'm going to kind of share with you a little bit about how I came into that. And truly, because of the shame I carried, because of like the sense of how helpless I was to the fate of my life and the sense of my identity and all of those things, I swung in the opposite direction at first. Of course, naturally, of needing to control everything, feeling like the only way I was going to hold on to my power or build my power in this world was by way of controlling the outcome, forcing things, pushing myself, sacrificing every last bit of my drive and energy and sense of being to what felt like it was going to move me forward and put me in a place where I could have power over life rather than be at the mercy of everything that fell out of my hands. So in remembering that space, it's a really sticky place that I haven't been to in a while. And I'm just thinking back to it. And I was so afraid. I was so scared. I didn't know how to operate in any particular way. I was small, weak, vulnerable, And in that, probably manipulative and hungry, desperate, fearful. All of those things are birthed through the feminine when she's living in control. And no matter how much she does in the world through that space, she will never get where she wants to go. Never. Because it's only in letting go of control that she finds this profound freedom. But the paradox of it, the really interesting paradox of it, was even though my mindset was in that place of control, because I had no really other choice, my body revealed to me a different reality that kind of sowed the seeds for me to move into this territory and eventually rise into the fullness of my feminine embodiment. And what my body revealed to me was this kind of effortless channel of flow inside of the arts, inside of my creativity. I was able to receive music and receive sound, receive movement in my body without thinking about it, without planning it. It just happened. And I was kind of like the witness to that in a weird, profound way. I surrendered to it so easily. And I experienced this sense of like, I have no idea what this means for me, but I know that I can do this thing. And it's really cool, to be honest. So obviously that means I should probably build something around it. So my body opened up to me. It showed me the magic of flow and intelligence of the deeper mystical realm of embodiment. And the truth of it is when we can let go, we can tap into a deeper intelligence through our body. This is the feminine's gift. This is why the feminine is oracle. This is why the feminine is aligned to the kind of like higher channels of speaking and vocalizing that which is unperceived. It's because her body is so attuned to the natural world that she can almost supersede her cognition and receive through that deeper framework, that fabric, this kind of much greater intelligence that can exist far beyond the scope of what her consciousness has currently caught up to. And that was the case for me. Like I opened this box of magic inside of my body that was stunning. It was breathtaking. And you want to know how I opened it? It was through my emotional kind of despair and the culmination of that despair, feeling so boxed into this place and territory in my life. In that just desperation, that kind of like the bottom of the barrel, I was so close to giving up, and my body kind of showed me something that was able to pull me outside of my despair, woke me up to my path. It woke me up to the higher truth. It was because I had no agenda around this energy that I could access it so pristinely. And the mistake of the brain in that equation was, oh, look, like, here's this thing that you opened by virtue of having no agenda. Let's build an agenda around it. Because that's obviously what the world conditions us to do. We wake up to this deeper intelligence and immediately, at least as we progress into our, adulthood and the game of society and capitalism, we're immediately kind of compelled towards, how do I exploit this to give me what I want, to give me a place that feels good and safe and that I don't feel like I can build on my own. How do I exploit this magic and use it, control it to protect me from my powerlessness? And of course, like, obviously that can't work because the way that I accessed that flow came without agenda. So obviously placing an agenda upon that place is going to shut off the well. And so often we don't see this. We don't realize this is what's happening. We open to something magical, whether it's our our ability to coach, whether it's our ability to channel art, whether it's our ability to step into some really profound higher intelligence that we lay witness to, and we're kind of like, holy shit, and what the fuck was that? That was stunning. That was incredibly powerful. That was mind-blowing. Now our human brain comes in and witnesses that divinity and is like, okay, quick, let's get the checklist out. We're gonna market this baby. We're gonna bring this to the world. And they're two conflicting paradigms. They can't operate in that kind of, I'm going to exploit you and I'm going to just channel freely, because in order to channel freely, you need to have a kind of space of honor and neutrality around your gifts that is giving them the space they need to tune into that deeper intelligence. The deeper intelligence isn't your bitch. That's the mistake we make in our little human identities. We think, oh, it's in my body, therefore it's mine. Therefore, I can make it do whatever I want. I can make it make me money because that's me, but it's not. And we need to realize that in order to actually live in alignment with our gifts. Because without it, oh, yay, I have someone here. I'm letting them in. Because when we try too hard to open to this space where we think it's about the we think it's about the money, we think it's about the presentation of it, we think it's about the kind of idea of it as serving us, we again cut off the source of it. We cut off the effortless flow of it. And then we end up stuck in this cycle for a really long time where we're kind of just like, yeah, I opened this thing and I felt like it told me that I was chosen. I felt like it made me feel like, hi, Florian, it's good to see you. Yeah, but I felt like I made this space where, if you have any questions, by the way, feel free, jump in at any point. Yeah, I'm happy to have you here. But I have this thing and I feel like it told me I was chosen for this. And I feel like it made me feel like I was this destined creature. But now that I'm trying to actually exist in relationship to that destiny, nothing's working. And it's not working because you're approaching it in a completely imbalanced way. You're approaching it as if it was your little slave, yours to kind of command and monitor and extract from and exploit. And of course, it's really natural. That's how our framework of society and capitalism as a whole has kind of oriented our little primal brains, because we have no capacity to really relate to the actual deeper currents of creation outside of that in this way. It can feel really, really foreign. And because of how deeply ancestrally hooked we are into this kind of game of sacrifice and dishonor, it's a lot to break that paradigm and break that ideology. So it comes down to, we have to eventually arrive to this place where we can fully let go of control in this more commanding way. It's not just about letting go of control and being like, whatever, if this is my destiny, if the world wants me to do this, then they're going to do it for me. Because that's a lot of the mindset that women can get into in relationship to their path, is like, I have these gifts, therefore the world should be taking care of me and bringing them to life and giving me the path forward. And I'm just going to sit back and wait until it shows me the way, until it makes things feel comfortable and easy. And that's just going to be the end of it, because it's this deeper kind of entitlement we have in relationship to our body and to relationship to our identity and our relationship to the embodiment of our gifts, that kind of makes it feel like we're entitled to the bounty of those gifts, when we're entitled to absolutely nothing. We could literally have the most profound gifts in our body in the world and they could wither and die just like our corpse. So it's not really as simple as this idea that This is inside me, therefore I am granted this path. We have to actually exist in this relationship where we're actively choosing that path, but we're also not building agendas around it either, because it's neither side of the spectrum is good. It's not really about the extremes of I need to completely let go and just wait for things to happen for me, or I need to hold on as tight as I possibly can in order to make things happen for me. It's about the kind of happy medium ground where you're finding out what does it mean to really let go of control, but also actively advance myself, expand this space where these gifts, these channels, these kind of powers have a lot of room to communicate and speak to the world as a whole. Because again, like, we get into this mindset, this like very spiritually entitled mindset, where we open to this body's profound capacity to be a vessel. And we think it's ours, again, because it's in our body, because it's flowing through our ego, or our ego is perceiving it flowing through. And we're just kind of like, oh yeah, like I just want this to be easy because I'm special and I'm chosen and I'm all of these things that are not actually true. Because if you look at the nature of evolution, there's all of these creatures that are of the exact same design, all the same template of gifts, and some of them survive and some of them don't. And it's the same with our gifts. Even though they have this unique configuration that connects to the spiritual realm and to our relationship to the spiritual realm, we aren't actually granted anything in relationship to the actualization of them. We are owed nothing by life. We are only at the mercy of this current of evolution that we either play into or, surrender to. And surrender not in the positive sense, but surrender in the sense of losing all agency, losing all directional power. Because I think a lot of times when we think about letting go of control, there's a sense of like losing yourself inside of that, which isn't actually true. I just saw this flying lizard. It just like flew over. It's like, yes, evolution. But yeah, it's really kind of like there's a deeper agency to the act of letting go of control, which has not to do with I know how everything is going to happen. It has more to do with I am resourceful enough to meet each unfolding circumstance and harness whatever I need from each unfolding circumstance in order to come into this place of power and command. Even if it's not working exactly to my plans all the time, I still have the ability to move forward, to kind of receive what needs to change and to shift and adapt to these currents. It's the same as riding down a river, like in a raft, for example. You're not in control of the river, but you are in control, in command of the way that you respond to the river. So if a good river runner, and I've run rivers before, I haven't been a river leader runner yet, but I've run rivers. A good person on a river is going to be really sensitive to the way the water is communicating to them. They're going to look to the shapes, the textures of the water, the currents. They're going to see, okay, where is that water leading me towards? Because if the water is going to lead me towards a stick or a rock or something that's going to pull me under, then I should probably shift directions. And sometimes you have to do it really fast. It's like with a river, you have these moments when you're riding towards the rapids where it's really about this quick response, this quick activated impulse that you immediately make just by virtue of that communication that's taking place between you and the river. And if you're not sensitive, if you're just like, whatever, blah, 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 I'm just in a boat and this is my life and this is cool, then the river's going to fuck with you. It's going to throw you. You're probably going to end up underwater at some point, drowning, because you can't not exist in relationship to the force that's moving underneath you if you're riding it. Same with your creative gifts. It's like this river underneath you that has all of these unique challenges and gifts to offer you. And if you exist in this kind of like helpless place of, oh, I'm just, being carried by my gifts and there's no element of agency involved at all, then you're going to constantly end up either ashore, underwater, drowning, impaled by a stick, something of that nature, or it's just going to feel really like if you're controlling everything of the river, if you're like constantly analyzing every small little detail, thinking about like, oh, I'm there, I know there's a rapid, a really big rapid 5 miles ahead. Therefore, I'm going to constantly think about that rapid because it's coming. You're going to be miserable. It's not going to be a fun experience. And we want to get to this place on your path creatively where you can be in that space of, I know there's challenges. I know there's things I have to grow. I know there's spaces I have to expand into. I'm not going to project myself into the future. I'm just going to be in communication with what's around me now and trust that that is moving me forward in this space of agency. So it's so much more than just this kind of like, I let go of control and I allow everything to be carried forward. There is a lot of active kind of exchange you need to begin developing within your creative path and within the way you relate to your creative path that determines what that experience feels like for you. Are you struggling with the kind of flow of money? Are you struggling with the sense of your direction? Are you struggling with where do I plug this into? Any of those things, they represent struggles that are coming by virtue of you not being sensitive to something that river is trying to communicate to you and protect you from. So it's all of this path really about rising into this kind of creative mastery and this creative genius is so much about understanding that what you're working with is a force that's bigger than your human ego alone. It's much bigger. It's connected to this divine current that then plugs into this world. And through that plugging into it, it opens to this kind of like oceanic, primordial current of creativity and evolution that is something you have to respect. It is something you have to trust. It is something you have to honor. It is something you have to develop a active, tangible relationship to, or else you're going to kind of feel like you're not really getting anywhere with it, or you're constantly running up against roadblocks, or you're feeling like you're overanalyzing every small minutia of your path. All of those things are not to do with the path itself, but to do with your relationship with the path. And the most kind of like erotically fulfilling space for that divine feminine creative energy is in the space of that lack of control, but also within that lack of control, the understanding of what it means to relate to that energy through lack of control. It's again, same as the river. Like you can't control the river, but you can control and command your response to the river. And that's where you experience this sense of power and mastery over the journey you're on, really. The journey that's bringing you to the heights. Because again, nothing is guaranteed. Nothing. You could say that I have the capacity to be the most powerful priestess in the world, but if you don't take actions to align yourself towards that, move towards that space, it doesn't mean anything. Potential is plenty in this world. Potential is plenty in existence, and you can find it in every corner of the world. And in homeless people, you can find it in the richest man alive, every aspect of the world, from all the way to the heights to the searing depths of the low vibrational planes. It contains potential. Nothing is guaranteed power. Nobody is guaranteed power. It's only in our relationship to the path towards power that we find true expansion, true capacity to move this life to our will and to our divine blueprint. But you can kind of like, and this is where the feminine gets stuck a lot of the time. She gets stuck in this place where she's like, oh, I, again, have this thing inside of me that I'm so aware of. And because of that, I feel like I don't have to do anything. I don't have to invest in myself. I don't have to go towards my desires. I don't have to rise. I don't have to sacrifice. I don't have to work. I don't have to push. And that's the shadow of her desire to let go of control. She wants to let go of control, but she does it from a place where she's losing her agency and she's losing her actual influence in this world. And when she's there, she will stay stuck in this kind of like whirlpool of dirty pleasure. It's like this kind of like spinning vortex of the pleasurable idea and validation of who she is, but no actual kind of like pathways to the experience of that power manifest. She's just kind of spinning in her potential, and she spins however long she needs to spin until she wakes up and realizes that she needs to choose her path at its highest potential. She can't just let go in this kind of immature princessy way. She has to let go in a commanding way, in a way that's going to bring and magnetize what she needs to the forefront of her path for her to capitalize upon, for her to build on, for her to receive instruction around execution. And it's beautiful when she's in that place of command, because she really can. It's like she can exist in the same way she was existing in the little vortex of pleasure, of dirty pleasure, in this other place. But the difference is that in the other place, she actually channels out into the broader world. When she's over here in this little vortex in whirlpool, she's not actually connecting with the broader world. She's just kind of feeding her ego, feeding her sense of destiny, feeding her own like self-contained identity as a priestess. But when she's over in this space, she's literally in the exact same place of like, oh, I'm letting go, but she's doing it in a way that's connecting her to the pieces that are going to externally kind of like hold that energy that she's letting go into, hold it, frame it, and speak to it in a way that allows it to further expand and build into a movement. So it's a very similar, honestly, embodiment. The only difference is one is connected to a kind of delusion, and the other one's actually embodied in the reality of what power represents and what power needs in order to take full effect and influence the actual structures of life. Because it doesn't matter how much intelligence your body is connected to if you have no capacity to utilize that intelligence in a way that's going to drive new life forward. If that intelligence is just utilized as a kind of like breeding ground for your sense of specialness, then that's great. You can die on that hill. It's nothing's going to happen and life will continue. I promise you, life will continue, regardless of if you save the planet with your multi-orgasmic pleasure portal or not. It's not as serious as our savior complex makes it out to be. You know, we start in this place when we're coming from a place of control where it's like, if I don't do this, the world's going to crash and burn. And it's not that serious. Yeah, you'll provide a lot of value as you actually actualize yourself, but life is not married to you and your powers alone. Those powers will find a way to harness themselves regardless of if you choose to actualize it or not. So the more we can actually get out of the ego, the more the lack of control becomes an actual place of power for us, a place of power and a place of command. When we're operating completely and wholly in the egoic need to validate ourselves, to prove our destiny, to save the world, to do these things that we think are dire, I promise you, you're not doing anything. You're just kind of like masturbating to the idea of yourself in that space. And it's really not useful to you. It's not useful to the world. It's not useful to any aspect of reality. So the more you can break out of that sense of like being owed something for your body's gifts and your body's connections, the more you can come into this place of agency where you can actually truly actualize it. And that's where the erotic experience of letting go of control is most profound, because when you do that, there's no longer this little ego filter. It's like throwing you back, throwing you back, throwing you back. You can now kind of merge with the deeper natural intelligence of life and live in relationship to that. And it's obviously not a place that's like, because of the nature of the modern world, it's not really what's the word? It's not really natural, I guess, to expect yourself to, or reasonable to expect yourself to exist in that egoic state all the time, like that kind of egoless state. So you have to find a way of building a bridge for yourself. Like, yes, I can experience the emotions of my ego. Yes, I can experience the pushback, the resistance, and all of these things. But on a deeper level, my path is rooted to that egolessness. And that's what makes it so powerful, because you are channeling it through a much deeper intelligence, and you have the ability to kind of like interface that with your human, with your deeper kind of creative formation. So yeah, do you have any questions, Florian? Or anything?
No, none so far, but it's very interesting listening to you.
Yeah, good. Okay, I'm glad you could be here. It's nice to have your presence, and yeah, it's a really powerful space to open up to inside of ourselves, because a lot of times we kind of relate to the accumulation of power as an idea of building upon our current identity, when so much of power is actually about deconstructing identity in a way that allows us to plug into this much larger playground for us and for our gifts and for our abilities. And once you're there, it's like, it's in that spaciousness that there's a lot of room for your higher divine identity to come and kind of exert itself in your embodiment, in your mind, in your way of being, in your way of life, in your way of creating. And that's the goal, is to get that room for that divine identity. Yeah. So that is all I have for today, but I will be hosting these quite often. So please join whenever. I really appreciated your presence. Glad you could come. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Let me see if there's any comments that I need to respond to. I've never. No. Okay. Okay, good. No. Alrighty. Okay. It was good to have you here, and I will see you soon. Thank you, everyone. Bye.